is. And it's something they say or do that challenges our need for power, approval, and love. When we feel threatened, we feel a loss of control. And when we feel like we're losing control of that, things are changing too fast and we have no control over what's happening, some people will use things like bluster and threats, arrogant proclamations about anybody they perceive as the other. Some folks use even passive-aggressive behavior like the silent treatment. Now, to be clear, I believe there are definitely times when anger is justified. When we see oppression, when we see poverty, when we see war and the casualties of war, and for me, it's especially the children, breaks my heart and infuriates me when I see that. Did you know that the Bible actually teaches that it's okay to be angry? Ephesians, the book of Ephesians, chapter 4, verses 26 and 27, basically says, go ahead and be angry. In fact, it starts out that way. It says, be angry. Yay! We can be angry. Yes. Oh, but there's more. Because there's always more. The phrase continues, be angry and do not sin. Be angry and sin not. You have got to be kidding me. Angry and sin not. And there's even more. It goes on. Be angry and sin not, and do not let the sun go down on your anger. So what the Bible is teaching here is it's okay to be mad. Sometimes there's a reason to be mad. Deal with it. Deal with it in healthy ways. And the Bible and unity teachings are in alignment here. What do we teach in unity? We teach that it's okay to feel what you feel. In fact, you should feel what you feel because eventually whatever's in here is going to make its way out there. And if we don't deal with it in here, what gets out in the world is probably going to be pretty ugly. Don't suppress your feelings. And find a healthy outlet for them. Viktor Frankl said, between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. Again, between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. Merritt Jones calls this the sacred gap between stimulus and response. So how do we make the most of that gap? It all goes back to curiosity, inquisitiveness, and being teachable. Here's an example. Have you ever been so angry about something? Pick an issue. You're so angry. And in a moment of wisdom, before you say or do something that you know you will regret, have you just stopped and thought to yourself, okay, why am I so mad? Why is this issue getting on my nerves so much? What is going on? Have you ever done? I've done that. Yeah. Folks, that's curiosity. That's inquisitiveness. We stopped. We're choosing to respond. We're accessing our power. And I want to give you a tip here. The question is, why is this making me so angry? Why am I feeling this way? The question is not, what is wrong with me? No, ask that. It doesn't help. I tell you not to do that. I do that sometimes. Danny, what is wrong with you? Oh my gosh. No, that's not helpful. Why? 2 reasons. One, when we start saying, what's wrong with me? We go into resentment. We are turning our anger inside to ourselves. And when we focus on that, we're not learning anything from our anger about what's going on. And 2, there's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with me. There's nothing wrong with us. How do I know that? What do we teach in Unity? We are expressions of the divine. One power, one presence, God, and we are part and parcel of it. Sure, we screw up sometimes. What do I say? Own it. We own our stuff. Make amends. Forgive others and forgive yourself. Do the work. That's how we learn, folks. That's what it means about being teachable. Do the work. We learn by practicing accountability, not by constantly beating ourselves up and getting caught in that negativity loop. So that's anger. Next up, another good one, worry. We're all familiar with worry. Deepak Chopra said we have approximately 60,000 thoughts a day. Unfortunately, 95% of them are thoughts we had the day before. So what does any of that have to do with worry? Well, if Deepak is right, if 95% of our thoughts are repetitive, fear-based thoughts like worry can have a huge negative impact on our lives. Remember our third unity principle. Basically, it says, and I'm paraphrasing, our thoughts have the power to shape our reality. Thoughts held at mind produce after their kind. Where attention goes, energy flows. Worry, like anger, has 2 manifestations: anxiety and regret. And both have the same root cause. Either spending too much time in the past or in the future and not enough time in the present. Thich Nhat Hanh said, do not lose yourself in the past. Do not lose yourself in the future. Do not get caught up in your anger, worries, or fear. Anxiety, the illness of our time, comes primarily from our inability to dwell in the present moment. Anxiety, the illness of our time, comes from our inability to dwell in the present moment. Anxiety tends to focus on the future. It's what I call living in what-if world while in a negative state of mind. And like anger, worry, anxiety can physically impact us. Ever hear the phrase, worry yourself to death? There's some truth in that, folks. It happens. I've said this before, and I think it bears repeating here. I don't know about you, but if I watch too much news, I can feel my anxiety rising. I can literally feel it rising in my body. My pulse changes. My mind starts doing this number right here. And I really feel it now during a presidential election cycle if I watch too much news. And that is why the mute button on our television remote is usually the first thing to wear out. Sometimes you just got to mute it. Turn it off, walk away, whatever. Some of you may have even heard the old joke that says something like this: there's a fine line between being informed and going insane. Little true, little sad. Merritt Jones suggests that when anxiety shows up, that we stop and ask ourselves, again, what's going on? What form of fear am I clinging to right now that's causing this anxiety? What's going on? What am I hanging on to, focusing on that's causing this anxiety? And number two, it's a two-part question. Is it doing any good? Is it serving any useful purpose? And usually it's not. Something that I am personally slowly, oh so slowly, learning to do in my life is to stop and ask myself, okay, Danny, what can you do about this? Really, what can you do about this? Prayer and meditation are always good possibilities. We can all do that. So you can't say there's nothing I can do, because there is always prayer, right? There's always meditation. Beyond that, however, given the situation, that really might be it. Sometimes we can donate, sometimes we can volunteer, sometimes we can go for counseling, we can do all those things. Sometimes, depending on the situation, the issue, and where we are in life, sometimes it's prayer and meditation and just sitting with it. Here's an example. I can and I do, and this is me, I can and I do pray for peace during this election season. I can and I will vote. I encourage everyone here who is registered to do the same thing. Doesn't matter who, vote your values, but however you express yourself in that way, I encourage you to do this something. Pray for peace, meditate, vote. However your values call you to vote, I encourage you to do that. I cannot, however, change the final outcome in a couple of weeks after all the votes are counted. It's going to be what it's going to be. So being overly anxious about the results of this presidential election serves no healthy purpose at all. And I'll go ahead and say it, for anybody. It's going to be what it's going to be. Now, do I still go to Anxiety World sometimes about this? Yep, sure do. But not as often as I used to. It's called baby steps, folks. Baby steps. Regret, as opposed to anxiety, lives in the past. Eckhart Tolle wrote, guilt, regret, resentment. Guilt, regret, and resentment are caused by too much past and not enough presence. Guilt, regret, and resentment are caused by too much past and not enough presence. Okay, so what does regret have to do with fear? Regret is rooted in a place that I call woulda, coulda, shoulda world. Woulda, coulda, shoulda. And it triggers another descendant of fear called shame, which we'll get to next week. Remember that fear, all fear at its core, is about loss. So when it comes to regret, we are looking at fear of what could have been what we feel should have been, and what could have been if only. And regret is tough, folks, because I said earlier, we all make mistakes. And we are usually much harder on ourselves than we are on other people. Still, the tough reality is you can't change the past. You cannot change the past. What I have found helpful, however, is, again, stop, practice some mindfulness, take a moment to remind myself of that truth, and then to look for the lesson. Because there's always a lesson. Even if the only thing we learn from something is, well, I will never do that again, that is a lesson. It's still tough, though, because, when we deal with regret, it requires that practice of forgiveness. And that's not easy either, always. Forgiveness of ourselves and forgiveness of other people. Yet, if we learn the lessons of the past, regret becomes less and less and less a part of our present. One more thing about worry. Remember that our master teacher Jesus said, you can't add a day to your life by worrying. Jesus also is quoted as saying, it is enough to focus on today's issues. Focus on today's issues. Seems like Jesus was kind of a power of now guy himself, huh? So remember, whether we are focusing on regret of the past or anxiety about the future, we're not adding anything to our lives when we do that. If anything, we are using up valuable life energy, which would probably be best used for other, more positive endeavors. So today's lesson, whether it is anger or worry or any of those manifestations, just take a moment and breathe. And in that sacred moment of pause, let's try to channel the spirit of that great theologian Marvin Gaye and ask ourselves, what's going on? What's really going on? And then listen. Let's be inquisitive. Let's be curious. Let's be teachable. Okay? So it is.